All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another London is Blue podcast, specific YouTube video. Dan, one of your hosts here. And look, we've got a couple things to talk about. Issues or concerns for yellow card accumulation for multiple players. We know that there's also plenty of interesting stuff happening with Cole Palmer and a record that you may not be aware of that he is very close to matching and exceeding in the Premier League. And also some comments coming out of the pre-match press conferences ahead of Gent from both Enzo Maresca and Casadei that we would love to chat with you about in this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the video, comment as well too. Always appreciate it. But taking a look at it, you may not be aware, or maybe you are aware because of Anthony Taylor and his shenanigans, that we actually have two players currently on 4 yellow cards, and in the Premier League, 4 yellow cards is one, with the amount of matches we played in this season so far, away from a 1-match ban heading into game week 7. We have not completed 7 matches in the Premier League, and Marc Cucurella and Wes Fofana both sitting on 4. They're tied with a couple other players in that position at the moment, but it is concerning to think about 2 of the players, Marc Cucurella, who's really been Enzo Maresca's first choice left back in this system, and Wes Fofana, who has had a chance to feature a substantial amount. I mean, he's at over 500 minutes for the club this season. Like, that is just a interesting place for both of these 2 players to be at, considering that Chelsea have themselves now in a position where you have to get through 19 games to get to the next point where you would not run into another suspension or the suspension taking effect. I'm just going to say, and you can let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, I think both of those players are heading to, between now and 19 matches into the Premier League season, they will both serve a single game match ban. The challenge that we have is when you start to think about the fixture list that Chelsea have coming up. And now you have Gent and Nottingham Forest. Gent is not a consideration because it's not the Premier League, but you have Nottingham Forest come up, and then you have the international break. Chelsea come out of the international break with a heavy run of important fixtures. Liverpool coming up directly after the break. Then you go to Newcastle. Then you have Man United. Then you have Arsenal. You have 4 matches in a row that, if you were to not have Marc Cucurella available, and if you were not to have necessarily Wes Fofana, which might be the more backup resistant or replacement resistant position among the 2, you might be in a bit of concern. And so just an early thing we want to flag for listeners as we think about where Chelsea are at right now. When you thought about it last season, several players in Chelsea's starting 11 and in the squad ran into issues with yellow card accumulation last season. We actually had 3 players who finished with above double digits, 10 or more yellow cards in the league. Marc Cucurella was one of those as well. We know Nico Jackson struggled initially, but did find an opportunity and an ability to work that out of his system and went with a very long and extended run of not picking up a card. And then Moises Caicedo with 11 was Chelsea's number 1 most card-absorbing individual for that Chelsea side last season. So things that Enzo Maresca is going to have to consider, particularly now, though, it does make potentially Ben Chilwell coming back into fitness being a consideration on the left-hand side to deputize for a match or 2. If there were to be a situation for Marc Cucurella, we know that Renato Vega is another individual who could play there. And then when you look at Wes Fofana's position, that then becomes does Tosin come in? Do we potentially have a situation where Badiashile features and has proven himself to be ready again for Chelsea after playing in the Conference League and playing in these cup matches? These are things that we know Enzo Maresca is going to have to think about in the coming weeks, particularly as Chelsea have, again, that really, really rough run of fixtures, and hopefully can get through them without major issue. Just in case you're wondering, do we have anybody else who is in a concern standpoint right now? You have Cole Palmer at 2, you have Nico Jackson at 2, and then you basically have the rest of the squad with 1 card apiece. Levi Colwill, Sanchez, Caicedo, Enzo, Gusto, Neto, Sancho, Vega, even with a very limited number of minutes in the Premier League this season. And all ended up with a card. So just something to keep in mind. More of a concern for the top 2 names, Wes Fofana and Marc Cucurella. But something to be concerned with because we know Cole Palmer will not be participating in those conference league fixtures. So that is something where he is being set aside. So good opportunity for him to focus on not picking those up, to be the individual that generates the other team ending up getting carded, not necessarily being the individual who gets carded himself. Now, as we also look at some of the other things that came out of the press conference for the Gent match, Casadei was the actual Chelsea player selected here, not necessarily the named player you thought might appear in the press conference situation. But there was an interesting nugget when he talked about the loan situation for him heading into this past transfer window and this upcoming season. And he flatly stated he was not thinking to leave Chelsea in January. He was not thinking to leave now. And he just said it was his decision in conference with the club to not go out after speaking to Enzo Maresca. He said it has plans to leave permanently and does want to play for Chelsea. Again, that is not entirely up to him in terms of will he be here long term, but something interesting to consider that, when we think about depth in midfield, we've had a chance to see him, not necessarily in a ton of opportunities this season yet, but this might be kind of potentially, with the Conference League fixtures picking up, with Chelsea advancing in cup competitions, could give him an opportunity, could give him a stage to really feature. And again, we're talking about, a player who is still very young in his career and has an opportunity, at 21, almost 22 years of age, to still get a chance and still get a shot at Chelsea. So it'll be interesting to see how much he does feature in the Conference League this season, have made it worth it to stay versus potentially having been a player going out on loan. We know that there was the interesting wrinkle of him having had a chance to show off and shine under Maresca at Leicester on loan last season. So it is surprising maybe that we haven't seen him as much, but we also have been trying to get other couple players like Dewsbury Hall, like Lavia, other midfielders firing, and maybe he's just been further and further down the pecking order in terms of considerations there. But great opportunity for him as we think about Conference League matches and cup matches coming up here. The other interesting, just crazy Cole Palmer stat that we're pushing towards. Again, what is he not redefining in the Premier League and in Chelsea? There's a record that Yaya Toure has right now for the most consecutive penalties scored in a row. That is at 11. Cole Palmer with 10 is now one behind that record, 2 away from setting the Premier League record for consecutive penalties in a row. And I don't want to jinx it, but this feels like the type of record that Cole Palmer doesn't necessarily care about. I think he would shrug it off and not necessarily say he's more concerned about the chippy chips. But this would be one that feels like a lock. And you can let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I feel like this is something that very soon will be Cole Palmer's record in the Premier League. I mean, we have many, many things and many, many accolades that he's picking up here, from hat tricks to scoring 4 in a single game. But this feels like it's just in his wheelhouse with how consistent he has been with his penalty game and focusing on who he is as a player. I think the last thing we want to talk about, and the Gent match may have happened already, or it may have, you've been watching this right before it. We can talk about who those heroes are going to be in the Conference League. I think we see, without Cole Palmer in this, that the attack is going to be refreshed. You can listen to our match preview, our hybrid match preview. We're talking about the Gent match and the Forest match with Sam, also on the channel here. But look to Christopher Nkunku, look to Felix, look to Mudryk, and look to Neto, I think, as those individuals, that grouping, to really get a fair number of minutes here and see if those can be the individuals to create some glory, some opportunity for Chelsea to really hammer Gent and set the tone for what should be a comprehensive set of results for Chelsea across the competition, advancing further and further into it, and hopefully, again, winning it. Because as we know, Chelsea have done very well on Thursday night football in the past. Europa League has been one that we have been able to touch and add to our cabinet. We've also had the chance to have not one, but 2 Champions League titles to own ourselves. And so this would be the final remaining major air quote, competition in Europe that Chelsea do not currently have. So why not, if you're in it, go out and complete the set? But let us know in the comments what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing Chelsea content. We'll be back after the Gent match. We'll be back after the Forest match, and we'll be giving you plenty of content during the international break. So stay tuned, and as you always do, until next time, keep the blue flag flying high.